Now then, Shorts fans, welcome back to another video. We're back in the, what's this? I mean, it's a hotel room of sorts, back in the cave of Melilla, Sierra Nevada, and welcome to another video with yours truly, the most miserable man in cycling. What are we going to do? What are we talking about? Who am I? What is Cycling Shorts? Who is James Shaw? How did I get here? What's happening? It's going to be not a long video, but I'm going to need a coffee. So first things first, let's sort that out. And we'll do an update, and then we'll do some housekeeping. Right then, folks, got coffee. If you haven't used our discount code to FullGasCoffeeCo, use discount code Shorts10. Get a little bit off. We might get a little bit of a sale as well. Depends who you ask. So go check them out. Partnering with the channel, great bunch of boys. We are going to do more stuff with them. The reason we are partnering with them is they do a lot of stuff for men's mental health charities, which is another video. First point of housekeeping. I know from this app here, I have an app called YouTube Studio. It tells me about 80% of the viewers watching this aren't subscribed. Disappointing. So one thing you need to go and do is go and subscribe. You can do it while the video is playing. You can just minimize the window and click subscribe. You don't have to click. Second of all, mics. You're one of those people. Test, that complained so much in the last video about mics. No complaining now. And if you were one of those people that complained and you're not subscribed, well, you're a massive hypocrite. Disappointed in you. I think that's it. We've invested, so we need you to invest. So please do. We actually did have these way before the video. We've had these a while. We didn't think we needed them, but luckily for us, so many of you were on hand to tell us that we did. You certainly told us that we needed them. So that's housekeeping. Update. Back in Sierra, back at altitude camp. Pays Loire Tour last week, successful week. Second on the final stage, third on GC overall. Happy days, all's well. Crack on, carry on with the prep for the Giro. Oh, I know, I can't know that. Which leads us to this video, which is just going to be an update about who I am, what the channel is, how the channel works, why me, whatever. One of the things I do want to say is I don't want the channel to be about me. I don't want the channel to be about James Shaw. I want the channel to be about cycling, which is why it's not called James Shaw Cycling. We called it Cycling Shorts. It's a play on my name, yet it's more about bringing you guys the honest truth of what it's like to be a professional cyclist. And it's not me going around going, oh, I did this today, or I did this today, I have this sponsor, I have this. I'm not interested in promoting myself per se. If I can and it helps, that's a bonus. But I want it to be more about cycling and more about you guys seeing the truth of cycling. That sometimes I say to people, oh, you know, I'm doing this, whatever, and they can't understand. Or a lot of triathletes ask me, like, oh, what Grand Tour are you doing this year? And I'm like, well, one of the three. And they're like, how do you not know? And it's like, yeah, well, it doesn't work like that. That's what I want to show you guys. That I was told I was going to the Giro, that I came here to prepare, and I had to go to a race mid-altitude camp. Like, people don't seem to understand that, and unfortunately, that is the truth, and that's what happens in cycling. So that's what the channel is. That's what I want to bring you along. I think I'm going to do this a little bit like a chapter. I'm going to go through bits. I've got a few notes on my phone, and then I'm going to try and gather in loads of photos, loads of varying different forms of stuff, probably really bad stuff as well, actually, some really crappy photos. So I understand it's not going to be perfect. So who am I? I'm James Shaw. I'm a professional cyclist with me at Education-Easypost, and I was born in Nottingham. 1996, year I was born. What happened in that year? Let's have a Google. What happened in 1996? What major events happened in 1996? 3rd of January 1996. The first flip phone. The first flip mobile phone goes on sale. Over 60 million units sold. Mike Tyson. Why can't I talk today? Mike Tyson knocks out Frank Bruno, gaining the heavyweight title. May, Manchester United wins the FA Premier League for the third time in 4 seasons. 20th of May 1996, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air airs its final episode. I was a little bit too old, a little bit too young to remember that. Madonna became a mum. Ford launches the revolutionary new KA City car. That was a disaster. The BBC airs The Simpsons for the first time in the UK. June, James Shaw was born. I didn't realise that had made this article. Oh, February, Take That split up. I'm sure that'll be alright. So 96 was a big year. The year I was born. I was born in Nottingham, and I was raised outside of Nottingham in the small town of Heanor, on the sort of this Nottinghamshire-Derbyshire border. What is it like growing up in Heanor as a kid? I grew up in one of these North Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire coal mining villages that have not moved on since the pit shut. Nothing happens there. Nothing will happen there. It's a place, I don't know what people do, but it's a big place people want to get out of. It's where I'm from. It's where I'll always go back to. It's where my parents still live. That'll be home, or okay, home where I live and home where the heart is. Maybe always be two different places. You go to school and then you try and move to either work at Boots in Nottingham or Rolls Royce at Derby. You get out. I'm a Forest fan. I'm not just Forest fan the past 2 years, been a Forest fan for the past 20 years through what has been a bit of a bad time the past 20 years at Forest. But hey, it's looking good now. So how does a boy go from growing up in an ex-coal mining village, going to a normal school with normal parents doing absolutely nothing, to racing a bike on the professional world level? What is the gap in the middle, and how do you end up on a YouTube channel? Let's fill it in. So chapter 1 is why cycling. So like I said, I'm a Forest fan. Did play football a bit as a kid, and I soon realised I'd got 2 left feet and I was useless at football. I don't know how we got to cycling. Maybe we went alphabetically. We went, okay, right, let's start from A, and then I did that, and I got to C, and hey, turned out I was quite good at cycling. Luckily, Hina had a little bit of a cycling club called Hina Clarion, and I rode there, met some friends, and some people I still know and talk to today at the age of 6. So got into cycling on the local park with a few friends. A few of the parents helping out, volunteers. One of the volunteers, an old guy called Don, he'd been like helping kids ride bikes since time began. Good old boy. Started riding around the park, got quite good at it. Some people said, hey, maybe James should try a summer cyclocross. So what does James do? James goes to summer cyclocross. What happened in this first ever race as a bike rider? I got lapped maybe twice by Lucy Garner. She went on to be 2 times world junior road race champion. She went on to incredible things. She's had a successful career. She's now retired mum, married to cyclocross legend Lars van der Haar. But my first race was that. I rode around and didn't really know what I was doing. Can't really remember it. A few pictures here and there. Probably try and insert one somewhere if I can even find it. Probably not. That was it. That was the first race. Why did I then go to another one? This was one of 4 in a series of summer cyclocross. So the next one got a bit better, next one got a bit better. Summer ran out, you go into winter when the cyclocross season starts, and everyone's like, I don't like this Notts and Derby series. You know, James should start doing it. I think I was under 12. I started racing a few of my friends that were also at the club, and obviously meeting more friends as I started racing. Got really competitive, got into it. Sort of got by the end of the season, got quite good at it, to the point where my dad was like, maybe we could upgrade a bike a little bit. So this upgrades. There's other kids at this point. This was under 12. There's other kids who've been in it, been doing cycling for years at this point, and we're already on like nice flashy bikes. And I was on an old giant Bronco mountain bike that was my mum's, full steel job, super heavy. And then other kid, at the time there wasn't carbon and all this fancy stuff for kids. It was all like, hand me down mountain bikes. So it certainly was for me. Come the summer, probably did another season of summer cyclo, another season of winter cyclocross. So 2 or 3 years passed. I'm getting into it, and then someone's like, at this point now I've got a couple of good bikes. Maybe I'm taking cyclocross seriously. I'm under 12. Every Christmas, every birthday, I got bikes or wheels. I wasn't fortunate enough as a kid that my parents could just go out and say, it's a new cyclocross season, I'll buy James a new bike. So it was like I'd start the season on maybe on last year's bike, and then by Christmas I'd maybe have a new bike, this kind of thing. And the bike would be massive to start off with, and it'd be tiny by the time I finished with it. Like I'd be told I'd grow into it and grow out of it, and I'd only have one. And often I'd have bikes when I was, say, growing into one, but growing out of another. So I'd be pitting and swapping bikes that were just completely different. Got quite successful, and I managed to be under 12 Notts and Derby cyclocross champion, at which point Grandma and Granddad were like, well, oh my God, like, at this point we thought this was like the peak of my sporting career. We thought, so for some reason, Grandma and Granddad decided to come along to the Notts and Derby presentation evening, where I'd received, I think it was a trophy, and on this trophy there's some good names, Sam Lowe. I want to say there's a few other people, but I know that they weren't on the under 12s one, but they were on later ones that I then went on to. But for some reason, Grandma and Granddad came along to this Notts and Derby presentation evening. There's always a raffle. And we were lucky that year that this new sponsor of the series was going to be SRAM. And SRAM came along to the presentation evening and offered a raffle prize, which is a full SRAM rival group set. Who wins this group set? Of all the people in the room, my grandma had the winning ticket. This is weird. So all she did was come and say, and the meal was rubbish. It was at some pub in Derby, opposite the train station. Can't even remember what it's called. The one on the corner. It was upstairs. Got my under 12s award. Probably drank too much Coca-Cola. Probably spent the whole majority of the evening running around messing around with my friends, not actually collected my trophy. Grandma wins this this group set from SRAM. That was the point of my first ever sponsor. So got this group set and continued to progress. At which point SRAM said, hey, James is quite good. Do you want another group set sort of thing? So at which point now I've got a sort of a semi-group set sponsor through people who are now my friends. So like at the time it was Graham Snodden, and he had a son called Ollie, still does have a son called Ollie, who lived close to where my mum and dad live. So when I go home, get to see my mum and dad, and I often ride with Ollie, I'll often see Graham. So now I've got friends, but this was like the start of my first ever sponsorship. Parents loved it because it meant we didn't have to fork out a fortune on group sets, etc. You can imagine how good this was. Start racing cyclocross, get to a level where okay, I'm pretty good on a regional level, doing a few national races, top 10 in here and there, whatever. Another season goes by, starting to get really good at national level now. Maybe top threes, the odd podium, occasionally the odd win. SRAM are really helping me now, bikes, wheels, whatever. This is sort of getting to 14, 15, and the application window is now opening for what at the time was called Talent Team, which is the British Cycling's national talent program. So I put an application in, didn't get on first year, but got offered a place on the second year. The big thing with British cycling, British, is you have to ride the track. Something I'd never really done before. I was always cycling across some roads. I got started racing on the track, started racing on the road. And as I got progressively further and further into the British cycling pathway, cyclocross became less and less of a thing. So continued on with trying to be a bike rider through British Cycling, who I understand actually a lot of the coaches are still there now. A guy called Stu Blunt coached me. Previously, before that, a club coach at Ena, he'd helped me out for a few years. Done a few interregionals, but it was like, okay, you're now under 16, you're on this British cycling pathway, you're going to do the track, you're going to do this, you're going to blah, blah, blah. Cracked on a lot with the British cycling thing. Every year it gets renewed, and as you go through the age groups, the program changed slightly. Now, I didn't get an allocation from when going from under 16 to under 18, so when I was 16, turning 17, I didn't get a place on the next pathway, the next step, conveyor, whatever you want to call it, of the pathway. So I ended up falling back to a lot of my club sponsors, people like SRAM, but also a guy called Adam Biggs who helped me out here in the Form brand at More and Large. So he was like really keen to help me out. He helped me out a lot, sorted me out with a lot of other sponsors as well. He sort of helped out with shoes and kit, and we sort of set up a bit of a team at the time. Adam left and went to Boardman Bikes, and we tried to set up a team there. It didn't work. My second year junior, I also didn't get offered a place again on the British cycling pathway, which was what I wanted, but I didn't have the option at the time. But luckily, I met a guy called Mark Barry. So those of you who don't know Mark, he was an Olympic track sprinter, and he then continued on with his life, and unfortunately had the worst ever situation if he lost his child, and his therapy was helping people who were about the age of his lad Lewis sort of achieve their dream of trying to become a professional biker. So he set up this junior team. I went to this junior team. Yeah, just started doing whatever I could with Mark. I met a guy called John Barkley, who is like the most unsung hero of British cycling. He really strangely used to meet at a lay-by near Croydon on the edge of London, and you'd all cram in the back of his car and you'd go out to Belgium and race kermesses. The rule was you could only take a rucksack, so you'd go for like a weekend racing in summer to go and race kermesses, and you only allowed to take a rucksack. And the rule and what behind that was, I didn't realise this at the time until afterwards, was on the way back he used to go to duty free and he used to fill his car with fags and wine and then sell it cheaper on the other side of when we got to the UK. So you were only allowed to take a rucksack because you were filling up his boot with stuff that he didn't think you needed, but he wanted to fill with drugs effectively. But John also had a lot of contacts with other big racers, so it meant that if you did well in the kermesse races that you pay for yourself, eventually you'd get offered the places in the bigger races. There's the British cycling pathway, and then there's the pathway I'm starting to choose, which is sort of funding myself, going out to Belgium, potentially looking at going to a Belgian team. I get to 16, and I'm also starting to realise that school isn't for me. I'm not enjoying it. My father was a teacher at the secondary school I went to. My old lady was a teacher at the primary school I went to, and it was nothing short of an absolute disaster, really. I hated it. They hated it. I don't think it's a great idea for your kids to go to the school that you went to. Anyway, got 16, obviously, in the UK, 16, year 11, you do have to choose whether you're going to carry on in further education. You're not allowed to just drop out. You have to go to a college or a sixth form or work or apprenticeship. So I went to what we call like a post 16 to do 12 and 13 where you do your A levels, and I made it till Christmas, September, to decide that. Then I left and went to work. So while I'm racing, doing these races out on the continent, I'm now starting my first ever job on £5 an hour. A company called Alpkit, who is like a decathlon-esque company. They make tents and sleeping bags and stuff like this. Funding myself to race because I'm not getting this British cycling funding, and starting to think, okay, like what am I going to do? And basically sort of came to the idea that what I'll do is I'll do a few years racing my push bike, and then I'll come back, get back into education and look at going to uni, this kind of stuff. Maybe I could do sports. Hopefully I'll get looked at as a mature student, this kind of mentality. That obviously never really happened at the time. I didn't really know this. And coming from a family of education, of two teachers, you can imagine the resilience I faced when I said, I don't really want to go to school. So going out at Barclay, racing in the worst kit imaginable. As a junior, I managed to win the junior versions of Kerner Brussels, Kerner Omloop, Het Nieuwsblad. I did a load of stage races, and John luckily managed to introduce me to the guy who is now the head sports director at what is called Lotto Destiny. No, it's not called Destiny. Whatever the Lotto, insert name here. The one in red, the proper Belgian one, not Quickstep, the other one. Introduced me to them. I got placed on their development team for the following year. At which point, British Cycling It says, hey, you've done all these great results. Do you want to go and be a British cycling rider on the academy at 18? Provisionally sort of said, well, I would be interested. Yeah. And they were like, look, you have to do the track, but we won't make you do it. You know, you just do the training sessions and we'll let you race on the road, whatever. A day before the application closed, I got a message saying, hey, look, you've not put your application in. I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to go to Belgium. I'm going to ride on this under 23 team. Applied for Dave Rayner funding, got that, moved out to Belgium, lived with Tim Harris and Jocelyn Ryan, who are like, I don't know how you describe him. Anyone that knows Tim will understand why I can't describe him. Bizarre bloke, but amazing contact, amazing, like the way he looks at life is just absolute mental. I'm 18, I've put myself through my driving test from all this money I've saved up £5 an hour working at Alphabet, which I hated. I've bought a £1,500 Skoda Octavia estate. I've just about got enough money with Raider funding, a little bit of money from my parents. I'm moving out to Belgium in February 2015 with the idea of, okay, let's go and do 2-3 years racing as an amateur, just make kids stories for the grandkids to tell in 50, 60 years time. That'd be great, lovely. Little did I know at this point, this is probably the turning point where I realised, or the turning point where I didn't realise that the pathway was then in place to become a professional bike rider, although at that time I wouldn't have realised it. My first few races in Belgium as a kid was, as an 18-year-old, I was shocked at the level. Like, I couldn't believe how much the level and how much more I got to improve. I remember going back to my accommodation that night and like sitting there and being like, okay, what on earth have I done? Like, it'd be much easier to be going out getting pissed at uni with my mates right now. So at that point, I didn't really know what to do. I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't really know how I was going to do anything. Living in Belgium, racing as an amateur, first few races had a shock to the system. Things aren't looking great. I've only got a 1-year deal at this point. Money's okay, sort of working. This is like a really weird point. I've met Tim. I've met so many people up to this point that have like changed the course of my career and my life. But then I've also met so many people and so many families that I've spent so much time with and influenced the hobbies and the passions I have today as well. So I'm now into cars a bit more, into watches, into motorbikes a bit more, this kind of stuff. I'm thinking, yeah, you know, this is the hobbies. You know, these are the things I'm desiring in life at sort of 18, 19, although I haven't got any money to buy any other than fake Rolexes off Paul. Hi Paul. Oh, did send me a message. No, actually that was it. I did have a couple of fake watches. I get offered a second year to go back to Lotto. I didn't have the option to stay with Tim and Josh, so I moved to a different place, literally 10 minutes down the road from where I'd lived before, with a family who are now almost like, at the time I moved in with them to live with them, and I was like renting a room off them, and they are now almost family. I moved in with the Janssen family, or I moved in with Yuri, who was, at the time he was 30, his mum and dad lived in the flat around the corner. He lived in this house, rented his spare rooms out to bike riders. He now has a kid and a wife and everything's grand. But at the time he was trying to live like the bachelor lifestyle, which obviously as an upcoming athlete, you think, oh, maybe this isn't optimum. Had a good second year, did 10th in Tour of Normandy, got third at Flèche Ardennes, all this kind of stuff. And at the end of that year, got offered a stagiaire. So like a stagiaire cycling is the last 3 months of the season, you can go and race for a professional team as an unpaid amateur. So you're unpaid, but you get the opportunity to just do 3 months as a stagiaire. At this point, I started to think, okay, maybe there's a career in cycling. Stagiaire went well. Luckily, they had a sponsor of Sadal who really wanted a British rider, and I went to Lotto. It probably wasn't a mistake to go to Lotto, but I was advised by Tim and other people to not go, and you'll see why this didn't go well. I went there with the full ambition of, I'm a pro bike rider. I want to be a pro bike rider. Let's go and try and win this. Let's go and ride. The ambition had blossomed now. As a kid, when I was riding those Knots and Derbies, I always looked up to Armstrong. Probably not the best person to look up to, but at the time, when I was 7, 8, and I was like into cycling as a kid and all this kind of stuff, I had a fake set of Oakleys, I had a fake set of, I had a real set of Mavic wheels, and I had a US Postal jersey and Nike shoes, and I really wanted a Trek, but I never had one. All because Armstrong did. And now I turn professional. Like, okay, let's go and try and be a professional, and be as best as I can. And Lotto just wasn't the team for me. It was difficult, and my passport was potentially the wrong passport. Yeah, I don't know why. Did 2 years there, had some really good results to tell for the Under-23 World Championships in Innsbruck with guys that are now winning all the best races in the world. I was left without a contract, didn't know where to go, didn't know what to do, didn't know who to turn to. Was like, that's it, career's over. What on earth am I going to do? I've realised I'm not putting this in chapters, am I? This is just one big chapter. Maybe that's chapter 1 is making it pro again. Flapped and flapped and flapped. I had an agent at the time who was useless, and I fell out with him, which was probably the best thing. Realising now leaving Lotto might have been a blessing in disguise, given the position I'm in now is so much better than where I potentially would have been. Maybe not, who knows. So ended up signing for a continental team in February in the UK called Swift. I ended up leaving my apartment I'd got in Girona. I left all my bits and bobs. I had to move back in with my parents, back to Hina to race for Swift. Now, I'm not going to go into any detail into Swift because legally there's a lot of stuff that went wrong in that team. Contracts weren't paid. They were trying to end stuff on false terms. It needs a solicitor and a book before that can be revealed. But long story short, that was a disaster. But there was some good things to come out of it. I met a guy called Bradbury. That's not his actual name, it's just his surname, but we just call him Bradders, who is now one of my best friends, and he got me through the year. I met a guy called Liam Holohan, who is also a good friend that I go on motorcycle adventures with, all this kind of stuff. So met Lewis, videographer, important person. He is behind the lens. He's the editor. Met him, Swift, forgot to include that. Insert Lewis name here. Pictures, Swift, all this sort of stuff. How is it going? How's life got to this point? Is without certain people actually saying to me, from that club from Hina when I first met them, and they were like, I was willing to give it up. I was like, that's it. Okay, career's over. I'd looked into becoming a train driver because my great granddad was one. I thought, cool, keep up a good family tradition. And it was something that actually really appealed to me. It was something I could do reasonably close to home. I wouldn't have to move far. I could become a train driver. The money seemed good. Hey, what was the worst that could happen? There's certain people in the club from Hina that said, no, come on, you're young, you've got to carry on, you've got to, you've got to get back to being a professional. So I said to myself, I'll give it one more year. Did this 1 year at Swift, did well at Tour of Yorkshire, did well in Tour of Britain, got me a place on a pro continental team, a guy called Michael Skelder, who was the head DS at the time. Now this is where things change a lot, because he is now my agent, and he was the team manager of that team. I left Swift, very easily left Swift, very gratefully, to go to a Danish pro continental team. Now the tour was due to start in Denmark. They were the only Danish professional team. It seemed like a great move. It was going to be amazing. It was a great move because I met Skelder, so on and so forth, albeit in the early part of 2020, nobody planned for a global pandemic. Personally, I just purchased a house. I'd passed my motorcycle test. I'd got a motorbike at this point. The Octavia had gone. I'd got a few other. I hadn't got any flash cars or anything, but I'd got the Octavia just had to go. It was just too old. So I got a smaller Fabia, but I got a nice Ducati motorbike. I'd got into watches as well. I'd made some good friends. Things seemed like they were going well, and I was back into the professional ranks in a professional continental team, and COVID hit, and the team stopped. The team folded. We were given the ultimatum: is basically we could pay you and nobody will race, or you can all ride for free. Was the deal, and we all chose to ride for free, but at least do some races and hope that we could jump back into other professional teams. Unfortunately, teams saw it so unfair that they just said nobody wanted to retire, nobody wanted to leave teams, so everyone just renewed their current rosters. So there was no spaces on teams, and yet we were on a team that had stopped and with nowhere to go. So where did that leave me? Again, falling back to the British continental scene, which weirdly doesn't exist now for whatever reason. So I went back to a team called Ribble. It was called Ribble World Pie at the time. Basically, like Ribble, again, great team, good setup. Met Sturgis, or I say met Sturgis. I knew Colin Sturgis. He was from Leicester. I'd known him years, but now properly got to know him. We actually realised that I could have, the year I left Lotto, I could have gone to Madison that he was running at the time. He offered me a ride and he offered me good money, and I don't know why I didn't take it or didn't see the message, but for whatever reason, decided to go to Swift. It was a disaster. Anyway, went to Ribble with Dan Bigham, who everyone loves, thinks that he's now the performance man at Bora. He's been the performance man here, did the hour record X, Y, and Z. He was there. A few of his other mates were there, and sort of went and said, right, okay, like let's just give it another year. So the theme here is, oh, just one more year, just one more year. I'd been convinced to go to Swift one more year. I'd convinced myself to go to Rewell to potentially ride the Tour to do one more year. I felt that the COVID year was not a nice way to end, so I'd convinced myself to go to Ribble to do one more year just to see if I could, do something. Had a great year at Ribble, did well in a few races, and managed to somehow negotiate myself a phone call with the guy who is now the head sports director here at EF, a guy called Charlie Wegelius, a British guy / Finnish guy. And basically, I'd fallen out with the agent I'd left at Lotto, and I'd represented myself now for these couple of years. Scouter was still managing the Rewell team. As the team stopped, he decided to do his agent's license, but I hadn't spoken to him for maybe 3 or 4 months because during the pandemic, the UCI, who govern everything, weren't allowing license. There's certain rules. You have to either be a solicitor, be bloodline, or you have to pass you have to have a UCI license to represent people. Because of the pandemic, it was really slow. He couldn't get his license, so he at the minute he hadn't. So they were still continuing as a continental team. I was at Ribble with Sturgis. We were cracking on, and like I say, did real well, and got this conversation with Charlie. And all I really said to Charlie was like, "Do you consider riders who don't have agents?" Because I represent myself, and I find it really difficult. I was going through LinkedIn trying to, get in contact with everyone, and he was sort of like, "Yeah, we do, and we don't, and whatever." He says, for example, this happens, this happens, this happens, and I said, "Well, that sounds like my situation, Charlie. Like, would you consider me?" And he was like, "Oh, yeah, that's a thought." So now it was a really weird conversation because it was all I was asking was, could you offer me some advice on does a rider need an agent? The advice was yes and no, and then I sort of used it to pitch myself a phone call to say, what about myself? So he said he'd speak with JV, and then lo and behold, so this is the second rest day of the tour. No, this is the first rest day of the tour. JV rings me just for a chat. And we had a really interesting conversation. I was terrified on the other end of the phone, and we talked about varying bits and bobs. And I think he just talked to you as a person. He wasn't actually interested in how you were as a bike rider. He just talked to you as a person, which was so bizarre. So anyway, I had this phone call with him. He said, "Okay, I'll be in touch with you in a few days." And there was a few other people I'd spoke to on different teams. There's a few stories I have missed out here that people be like, "Why have you not told the story?" For example, the story. And I feel like it's not worth getting into a potential debate. There was a weird situation where a sponsor affected me going to a team in favour of another rider, which, because I'd not signed, I'd only verbally agreed, and it all fell through anyway. That's a different story. So walking my dogs, had this phone call with JV, and then he sends me this message and he says like, "Oh, it all comes down to this." And then he gets me to pick between 2 breeds of dogs. He's like, would you take this dog or this dog? And I was like, so didn't even know what one of them was, had to Google it. And I was like, this one? And he was like, yeah, my ex-wife won that in the divorce settlement. And I was like, right, okay, so what does that mean? Now I know that was a joke. It wasn't a serious conversation. Anyway, the second rest day of the tour comes. I'm out on my bike. I'm doing long training. I'm riding for Ribble. I'm trying to get ready for the Tour of Britain, blah, blah, blah. And I always turn my phone into flight mode. I don't like being disturbed when I'm on my bike. Always have my phone. I got to the cafe. It was a hot day. I needed to refill with water and turn my phone on and see if any messages. And lo and behold, a message came through from JV. It was, "Do you want a 2-year deal on €80,000? And I was like, am I going to reply when I get home? I'm going to try and bid him up. I thought, no. The situation I'd had to this point, I just replied there and then. I don't think I even put anything more than yes. I think I just put yes. I just replied with yes. I was like, deal or something like. I didn't. It wasn't like a long conversation. I was just like, bam, let's do it. Contract came through a week or two later. That was it. I'd signed for EF for 2022. I came here to the team 2022. I feel like I've just progressed gradually through whatever. I've done my first Tour de France. I did my first Vuelta. I got some good results on stage in the Tour de France. I'm going to do my first Giro this year with any luck. And I'm in Sierra. Not that much to complain about. I can't really moan too much. So that, yeah, that's sort of it. I'd been through the mill financially, trying to, get mortgages together for houses, and then I got gaps missing in my financial career where COVID had happened or teams hadn't followed through with contracts and things, and it'd all been a bit of a mess. But effectively, turned professional, went amateur, turned professional, went back to being an amateur, and turned professional again. Is the point I got to here. So how have I ended up with a YouTube channel and what is cycling shorts? So like I said, I met Lewis and we said that was it really. We didn't really know each other. Probably didn't speak to him that often. But I always had this idea that it'd be like really cool to have this YouTube channel, but it's not about me. Nothing's contracted to me. It's nothing to do with me. It's all to do with cycling, to do with you guys. You guys can write in the comments what you want. We'll try and make it happen. So that's why we're here with EF. That's what the team is. When I joined here at EF, I thought, I better read Charlie's book, read JV's book. So we'll put an Amazon affiliate link in that below because I bought them both off Amazon. Actually. Try and get to know a bit more about these people. I guess the thing is it's easy in this team because they say they get loads of people contacting them like, yeah, I just want to come and ride gravel, and it's like, yeah, we're not about just riding gravel. I had this vision, had this idea, had this thought of maybe, yeah, let's start a YouTube channel where we literally bring people along for the journey, because I see so many other YouTubers and so many other people, and I'm just like, it's all about them, or it's all about, oh look, I'm going to another race here. It's not about, for me, what I see professional cycling is and what professional cycling doesn't get portrayed to you guys. So yeah, got in touch with Lewis. I don't know if Lewis knows. Lewis actually wasn't the first person I mentioned the idea to. Somebody had approached me with the idea. Oh, I know a videographer that would really love to start a YouTube channel with you. And I didn't really have the confidence, and I still don't really like being center of attention. Like I don't like really speaking to a camera. It's not something I really enjoy. Like when I got married and I had to do a speech and like all eyes are on you, and I was just like, oh, I don't like it. But I'm getting better. I'm getting over it. Because one of the things I learned when I was at Alpkit is I didn't like answering the phone, not speaking to people on the phone. It's one of the things working in customer service, you have to know the phone. So somebody had approached me and said, yeah, do you want to start this channel and we can, I've got a videographer and, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, my only issue was I didn't want to do it with somebody that I didn't feel was putting in the same sort of effort, or maybe that didn't have the same they approached me purely with the idea of like monetizing the channel, and I was like, I don't want to have the pressure of that, and I don't want to basically just because of the content I can get make you money. I'd done hard about it, and obviously I'd met Lewis and occasionally bump into him. He said some good jobs with DSM and things like this. I knew the quality of his work, and I was like, oh okay, let's try and put something together. And to be honest, it took us months to do it. Like we didn't get things organized to start off with. I'd not replied to a message, he'd not replied to a message, and I'd be like, okay, no, I won't push it, I'll just leave it. And then as of last year, we finally sort of said, actually, no, let's put it all together. Let's see if we can make it happen. So that's why we're here. So what's to come? What's happening? So we've invested in mics, we've invested in cameras, we've invested in drones, we've invested in a logo designer, we've invested in a name, we've invested in a company that owns everything. So we really need you guys to go online, comment, and subscribe, and turn notifications on and slip in DMs. What's coming next? So I stay here for a bit with the team in this hotel, then I go to Sierra. I stay in Sierra in my own Airbnb, and we'll try and churn out some good content then. A few other bits and bobs. It's quite difficult to do on your own, this stuff, which is why this video is just a piece of camera. It's not really have any interest in any videography. It's just talking, because it is quite difficult to do on your own, or if you've not got the freedom. Like I can't roll down the hill with the boys in the morning and be like, smile, you're on camera, because they might not want to be on camera, and I don't want to force it on people. So it is a little bit difficult and is a bit harder. But once I'm up on my own, I've got a new camera coming next week. My wife will be there again, so I'll have my lovely camera assistant back on back on set for you guys to moan about her audio if you're really upset her. That's not true. She's actually gone out to look after the dog, so that's why she's not here. Potentially Lewis could fly out and bring a proper camera next week. We're sorting out. We don't know what's happening. We're potentially looking into the idea of doing inside the shorts. I think we'd call it. It's podcasts where we'd interview people and maybe do that online. That's something that could come. Videos that are coming is going to be what you eat, what you take at altitude to help you perform, how lean a bike rider is. Like I said, we're going to the Giro, so we're going to clickbait the life out of that and see where we go from there. So if you like this, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Go check out all the videos. Do that thing that all YouTubers do. Here, whatever. And I think that's it. I think we're done. I hope this works for that.